does it take to get some people's attention? That's what a certain chicken farmer wondered. You see, drivers were speeding down his road in front of his house all the time. The cars and the trucks whizzing by, and every day, 3 or more of the farmer's chickens were getting hit and killed. So one day, the farmer decided to call up the sheriff and said, "Sheriff, you've got to do something to slow these drivers down." So the next day, the sheriff sent out some county workers, and they put up a sign that said, "Slow school crossing." But that sign wasn't successful. The cars and trucks seemed to even go faster down the farmer's road, and more of the farmer's chickens were getting hit and killed. So again, the farmer called up the sheriff and said, "Sheriff, that school sign isn't slowing the people down. Can you put up a different sign?" And so the next day, the sheriff sent out some other county workers, and they put up a sign that said, "Slow children at play." But even that didn't work. The cars and the trucks were still whizzing down the road and killing the farmer's chickens. Well, day after day after day, for weeks, the farmer kept calling up the sheriff and complaining, asking him to do something about those speeders. Finally, the farmer said, "Well, since none of your signs are working, can I put up my own sign?" And the sheriff said, "Okay, that's fine with me." At that point, the sheriff could have agreed to virtually anything just to get the farmer to stop calling him every day. Well, several weeks went by, and the sheriff hadn't heard from the farmer, and he wondered how that speeding problem had been resolved. So the sheriff called up the farmer and said, "Well, did you put up your sign? Are your chickens still getting killed?" And the farmer said, "Oh yes, I put up my sign, and the cars, they're slowing down. I haven't had one chicken gotten killed in weeks, but I'm kind of busy today. I've got to get back to work, so goodbye." And the farmer hung up. Well, the sheriff wondered what kind of sign the farmer had put up that had solved the speeding problem like that. The sheriff figured if that sign was so effective on that road, maybe he could copy it and use it around the county. So the sheriff got in his car and drove out to the farmer's place, and when he got there, his jaw dropped when he saw the sign, because spray painted on a piece of plywood, the sign said, "Nudist colony. Slow down and watch out for the chicks." What does it take to get people's attention? That's what Jesus must have wondered as well. As Jesus went around, he kept preaching and teaching about how God loves all people, how God forgives all people, how God welcomes all people. But it just didn't seem like people were paying attention and getting what Jesus was saying. And so Jesus figured, okay, this will get their attention. And what Jesus did was he started hosting some dinner parties. But instead of inviting the good, decent, religious people to those parties, he went out of his way to invite sinners to his party. You know, the bad people who had seriously wandered away from God. And when Jesus did that, all of a sudden, the good, decent, religious people were all up in arms and came to Jesus and said, "Jesus, if you're really so good and holy as everyone says that you are, then why are you hanging out with these people who are so utterly lost?" And so Jesus said, "I'm glad my parties finally got your attention. And now that I have your attention, let me tell you 2 little stories. First, once upon a time, there was a shepherd who had 100 sheep. But at the end of the day, when he gathered them into the sheepfold and counted them, he discovered that one of them was missing. And so, dropping everything and leaving the 99 behind, the shepherd went out and searched and searched and searched until he finally found that lost sheep. And when he did, he put the sheep up on his shoulders and carried it home, and called up all his friends and neighbors and threw a huge party. That is what God is like. Or, Jesus said, if you don't like that story, try this one on. Once upon a time, there was a lady who had 10 coins. But one day, she discovered that one of them was missing. And so she lit a lantern and got out of the room and searched and searched and searched until she finally found that coin. And when she found it, she called up all her friends and neighbors and threw a huge party. That is what God is like. Do you get it? Do we get it? Do we understand that God loves all people? Do we understand that God won't rest until everyone hears that message? God won't rest until everyone knows that they are loved and forgiven and welcomed by God to be a part of God's incredible, fantastic, eternal celebration. We are loved, forgiven, and welcomed not because we've earned it, not because we deserve it, but simply because that is what God is like. Almost every day when I flip through the comics section of the newspaper, I'll at least take a glance at the Family Circus cartoon. Family Circus is the one with the mom and the dad and the 4 young and rather lively little kids. As far as I'm concerned, a Family Circus isn't exactly a cartoon that usually gives you a belly laugh, but usually at least it can bring a smile to your face. But when I looked at the cartoon this past week, my immediate reaction was, this isn't funny. You see, the cartoon showed the mom and dad and grandma setting up a picnic dinner in the family's backyard. And as they were doing that, a little neighborhood kid was standing there leaning against a tree. And the mom said to him, "Shouldn't you go home now, Bobby? We're getting ready to eat." And the child replied, "That's okay. I'll just stand here and watch." My reaction to that cartoon was, that's not funny. The problem is that there are a lot of Bobbies around, and the reality is that there might not be a dinner waiting for them at their house. Or if there is one, it might be just a box of instant macaroni and cheese that they're going to have to cook for themselves and eat by themselves. Now, as far as what I'm concerned, that mom should have said, "Bobby, you are welcome here." Even though Bobby didn't have a right to be fed at that family's table. Even though he did not deserve an invitation to come and eat with them. You are welcome. That is the message